Welcome to the latest segment of Bridge to Business, a show dedicated to Old Bridge businesses and the people that run them. As the economy and businesses begin to gain back normalcy, we recently experienced Memorial Day and the statewide mandate for masks lifted for vaccinated individuals. This is certainly a welcome to business owners and the momentum we desperately need. And while the ability to gather, see each other's faces, and interact as we did before the pandemic, this is the road of recovery we need. Let us also remember to have sensitivity to those that remain uncomfortable. For many, it will be easy going back to living normally, but for so many others that have been impacted by COVID in different ways, from tragic loss, lingering health issues, economic difficulties, unemployment, and schooling, that have needed to be sensitive to each other and be patient. Let us continue to be good neighbors and citizens so that we can move forward in growth, prosperity, yet remember the difficulties we face together and learn from them. Here to discuss our experiences during the pandemic and how Raritan Bay is meeting the healthcare needs of the community, Old Bridge, and the area, let us now welcome Joe Banuan.
Hi.
Welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of Bridge to Business.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'd also like to introduce our mayor. He's our co-host of Bridge to Business. Mayor, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you, David, for having me on the show, and thank you, Joe, for joining us. It's an honor to sit next to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. And thank you. Obviously, Joe, we're going to be talking quite a bit about the pandemic.
Sure.
As well as what Raritan Bay has experienced. But why don't you give our viewers a little bit of a background as to you, your education, and how long you've been at Raritan Bay?
Okay. My name is Joseph Banuan, and I'm the nurse manager for the adult ICU and telemetry units for Raritan Bay Medical Center, the Old Bridge Division. And I've been with HMH Raritan Bay since 2016 when I came aboard as the night shift supervisor. And then when the opportunity came in to become a full-time manager, I joined the Perth Amboy Division, and I was the manager of Special Care Unit, which is the telemetry unit over there, in 2018. And I was there for about a year. And then when the ICU position opened up over here, I came back and became the nurse manager for the intensive care in the spring of 2019.
Wow. Well, we're glad to have had you and your leadership here. And none of us would have known what was in store for what was about to come. So you came in 19, and shortly thereafter, here comes March of 2020 with the first rumblings of COVID and state shutdowns.
Yep.
So give us that first-person experience of your team as well as yourself having started with the pandemic, the virus is coming, we don't know much about it. What was the response on your guys' side?
I think in the very beginning when we started to hear rumblings back in the late fall, around like November, December 2018, that the coronavirus in China is coming, it hasn't come here yet. We slowly started preparing, and things were set in place. We've got a great leadership team, administrative leadership team at Raritan Bay, and a strong infection control team in the division, where they helped slowly prepare us to get ready. And when we actually got the first patients back in, I believe, March of 2019, things started to roll. And just getting, probably one of the basic things was getting the PPE. So that every employee and every team member and patient was safe, because it was unknown what was coming. And it was great that even though we're a small community hospital for both divisions, that we were prepared and every team member was safe with the PPE that they provided for us.
That's fantastic. Now, Mayor, how was your time in that beginning and any communications with the leadership at Raritan Bay and preparing for this pandemic?
Well, nothing could have prepared us what happened. With the global that we live in, with the global travel and global economy, we all heard about what was going on in China. We didn't think it was going to get here as quick as it did, but it was here way before I even think they thought it was here, early December. And at the time, it was going to be a 2-week. We were all going to stay home for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, here we are a year and a half later. But our relationship with the hospital has been tremendous since day one, taking care of what they need. I think we reached out, what do you need from the town? And in the beginning, PPE was a little short. We had people in town knitting masks, delivering them. We had high school students making face shields. We had every business in town in the food business would bring food to the hospital. So
Yeah, we
really,
were.
as a mayor, I was so proud of the way the residents in Old Bridge responded and realized how much they appreciate to have Hackensack Meridian here in town, and guys like Joe and his complete team. It was a team effort
Yep.
over at the hospital.
Absolutely.
But I don't think to answer your question, Dave, I don't think we were ready for what was coming our way. And I think
you
we
said
were
it well.
fortunate. We
Right.
were very fortunate to have a hospital here
Like
in
who
town.
who could be ready for this? Right?
Yeah.
Right.
But the mayor touched on something very interesting. Obviously, this is a show about business and how the business community was severely impacted, but yet there was this philanthropic mindset of looking after the healthcare workers. So how did that make you and your team feel, being isolated up on ICU, but seeing people making masks and just out of the goodness of their heart?
Yeah, extremely grateful. Even the Old Bridge Public Schools, they donated goggles from the very beginning, and the outpouring of businesses with the food, the amount of food that the entire hospital received. Every employee, I'd have to say, we were all grateful and fed very well during that time with the amount of donations that all the businesses came that donated, and we were extremely grateful and very proud that to serve the community, because we knew that the community was behind us, and even if this was a small token of their appreciation, we felt it as well, and we are very extremely grateful, and to this day we're still grateful for the reception that we got and for the support that we received from the community.
I think, David, not to interrupt, but it felt like a void because, like myself, I felt hopeless. I'm not trained in the medical. I didn't know what to do if somebody said I have COVID, but you gave an outlet for people to help and feel like they were contributing to. So it filled a void of hopelessness
I think
to
that's
give
a
us
great
an
point.
opportunity to help.
Right.
Because we just.
Well, with you being a ICU nurse, I mean, that is ground zero for this pandemic. Give us a little bit of that first person experience, March, April, May, as the admissions are just skyrocketing. New information is coming out, daily, sometimes hourly. What were some of the changes that you, your team, the network had to do immediately on that ICU floor?
Probably to prepare. Usually for the COVID positive patients, you really needed like a negative pressure room, and I've got to hand it to our engineering department where they completely flipped our ICU floor to make sure that we had negative pressure rooms on all.
Now, would you mind
rooms
just explaining
available.
what negative pressure does to enhance the care for a COVID patient?
So negative ventilation, it's reverse ventilation, where the particles in the air aren't circulating around and it's being distributed outside through a filtered system, so that nothing's lingering. In a mindset what negative pressure is, and for them to do that, it was extremely helpful to all of us, as well as for them to, with the amount of PPE that we were going through with the supplies and everything, to conserve and to adequately protect individuals from going into the patient's rooms, because all the rooms were closed and you'd have to gown up with the full gear and taking everything off safely. They provided outlets where we would have the IV poles and pumps with the medications that the patients would need outside the rooms, with an outlet for them being hooked up to the patient inside, so it minimized the amount of exposure for team members going in. One of the biggest things also was being in a large network facility. We reached out to Hackensack, and they actually helped and brought down one of their educators and helped my team learn how to manually prone patients from flipping them over safely. Usually when you prone a patient, it becomes a 1-to-1 ratio, and you'd have to rent a rotor-prone bed. And at that time, rotor-prone beds weren't applicable, with the amount of patients that were coming through. And so with everyone learning how to manually prone, it just helped tremendously, where we didn't need those beds, and we would set up a team with other departments. We would train them, physical therapy, people in cardiology, a lot of ancillary staff that would come up and train with us and help flip the patients over.
All hands on deck, as they say.
Correct, yeah. And I have to say everyone pitched in from nursing to physical therapy to cardiology, housekeeping, everybody. It was a team effort, a complete team effort approach, not just because you're an ICU nurse. No, you were there as a team member, and they all came in and helped out, which was a tremendous support. It showed complete unity.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's so encouraging to hear these stories of the ingenuity of the people right there on the floors, right? Just creating the lines that are outside of the room, the negative pressure, learning how to prone a patient for their experience, and hopefully on the road to recovery from COVID. But those are all things that come on the fly, right? Figuring out as you go, as new data is coming out. So what processes that were put in place during maybe this last year are maybe standards now that you guys have kept?
Well, basically, there's a lot. We know how to differentiate patients coming in that are COVID, that are under the influence, or you're screening the patient as well. Now everyone's getting swabbed downstairs, down in the ED. And when the swab comes back, they're safely placed accordingly.
Somewhere in the hospital based off of that swab.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're happy to say that I believe as of yesterday, we didn't have any positive patients in the hospital, which is a good thing.
Incredible.
So after a long while, it's great.
Wow, that is, and that's part of this whole mask lifting and getting back to normal, as they say. And in our opening monologue, we talk about how that may take different time frames for different people.
Yeah.
So staying on that vein a little bit, tell us about the interaction of the nurses there, just the coming in and going home. And you have some stories about the personal impact of serving families in COVID and then coming home to your own family. So would you mind sharing some of that?
Sure. It was tough because in the very beginning, families weren't allowed to come into the hospital. Like visitation pretty much stopped in the very beginning of COVID. And then trending forward, it lifted and family members were allowed to come in 2 at a time to come in. Visitations now lifted up, but in the very beginning it was hard. So we came up with iPads and FaceTimes and to have them right there with their family member. And at times it was tough for the family members to make that tough decision if, we knew what the end would lead, that they wouldn't survive or anything. They had to make that tough decision, and for them to say goodbye via iPad or telephone, it was tough for them. It was extremely tough.
That's as hard as it gets there,
and a lot of my team members, it took a toll on them. But we've had decompression sessions with our psych department. They came over, and we've had meetings, and nurses were able to come in and talk about their feelings and their frustrations and just to let things out. And that's still continuing today. So if we need a session, we would just call them and they would come over and they would meet.
That's great. Well, Joe, thank you. So we're going to pause right there.
Sure.
We're going to go into our second segment. We'll dig in a little bit more about your personal experiences and all the amazing things that are happening at the hospital. But we have Joe, ICU nurse for Raritan Bay and Hackensack Meridian, and Mayor Owen Henry here, so we'll be back in just a few moments.
COVID-19 is on the rise. It's more important now than ever to follow strict guidelines. Protect yourself and loved ones. Always wear a mask in public. Wash your hands frequently. Maintain a safe distance of at least 6 feet from others, and work with contact tracers. It's also helpful to get your flu shot this year.
Together, we can stop the spread of COVID-19. For more information, visit middlesexcountynj.gov/COVID-19.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your closet. Still no jobs? Just more stuff? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed, and they're the stuff inside your stuff. Our job is to unlock those jobs, and it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
The COVID pandemic has forced arts venues across New Jersey to close their doors. We hope this is just an intermission, but your support is needed now more than ever before. Without it, many may never reopen, impacting countless local businesses and communities. The arts in New Jersey drive $662 million to our state's economy. Recovery depends on you. Learn how you can help at keepjerseyartsalive.org.
Hello, I'm David Hernandez and welcome back to Bridge to Business. Continuing with our segment with Raritan Bay and the COVID pandemic, I'd like to welcome back Joe and Mayor Owen Henry.
Thank you, David.
So
Thanks,
Joe,
David.
we had finished off our first segment talking about the impact of the nurses, but you have a personal story about coming home every day. So
Yeah.
why don't you tell us about that?
In the very beginning, since you basically work with COVID patients, you want to make sure that you keep your family protected and safe as well. So I would come home and I would just undress in the garage, put my clothes in a bag and bring it to the basement to wash and head straight for the shower without kissing my wife or kissing my kids or anything. But I remember vividly that last May 2020, right on Nurses Day, I came home and my wife all of a sudden wasn't feeling well. She got swabbed and boom, she was positive. So it was tough for us because my mother-in-law lives with us and she was being immunocompromised. You know, it was dangerous. And she got swabbed as well and she turned out positive. So we didn't know if it was from her getting her chemotherapy or if I brought it in that I wasn't aware
Sure.
about. So that was a tough 2.5 weeks for me. My wife and my mother-in-law were separated from us, from my two kids, my daughter and my son. We were downstairs, they were upstairs, and basically I had to take control of everything, like cooking, feeding the kids. My kids were in Zoom, making them, they're up and doing Zoom and everything, preparing meals for my wife, walking the dog, feeding the dog. So, but I was very grateful for for both our families coming over and like just dropping off food at the front porch. And that's what you did. Basically, you would just drop things off, ring the doorbell and leave. And you couldn't go out, you couldn't go grocery shopping. You were just pretty much confined at home. And even like walking the dog and everything, you were just pretty much confined in your backyard and just going from there. So you don't want to make sure that you're not exposing yourself to the rest, to anybody, basically.
Right. So going through that personal experience, when you came back into the workplace after that, how did that change perhaps how you dealt with your nurses or perhaps patients having literally just gone through that on such a personal note?
Well, it was kind of like a relief getting back to work, getting to the swing of things. And actually, I have a great team of nurses. They had a welcome back sign. They had cake. They're like, "Welcome back, boss." And I was like, "What is this?" So it was a relief that they're like just to see their faces again and just picking up where we left off and going from there. I mean, my office, we joked around and we called it a little bodega store because we had all the equipment, all the PPE and everything there for the team. And it was just like I never left. Everything, it was like stocked to the T.
Nice.
And it was,
So you
it
get
continued
PPE
on,
and some snacks and soda from
Basically,
your
yeah.
office, right?
And scrubs and
Right.
everything, so they could just go in there and get what they needed to get.
So you bring up something interesting about the cake and the welcome back, but you guys did something pretty similar with discharge patients with COVID.
Yeah.
So what? And I know, Mayor, you were involved with some things with the staff there at the hospital. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then Mayor, you can chime in.
It was great during the first wave when patients were actually going home diagnosed with COVID and everything, they're actually leaving. They would play Eye of the Tiger or Survivor overhead. They
It's a
would
good pump you up song.
we would call it Code Survivor, and every team member that was available would rush down to our hallway in the ER, and we would line up on both sides and we would like clap and blow horns and ring bells for patients that are going through being discharged home. And it was great to see their faces smile, to see every team member, even though everyone was wearing masks and everything, but everyone was grateful that we had someone going home getting discharged. And everything was a great sense of a team unity.
That's fantastic.
And being as one, supporting everybody.
Now, the town did something not for the patients specifically, but for the hospital.
Yeah,
right?
we knew, David, how important it was that staff and what they were going through. We put a big banner up on the front lawn for Mayor Henry saying, you're all heroes, you're working here, thank you. from our community. Then we organized, the chief of police at the time organized a motorcade
Yep.
with, I think, the entire police department
Yeah.
and many of our first responders. And our residents came out, and we had enough people to line. It must have been 100 yards long.
Yeah.
And in between shifts, when the nurses and staff came out, they were given a very loud ovation and thanking them, and it was very emotional for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's tremendous. It's tremendous, like you said, just to know that you have that supportive community and people that you don't necessarily know, right?
Correct,
You
yeah.
expect your family and your friends to be there,
Mm-hmm.
but when just strangers show you that care and support, it's almost just as uplifting.
I mean,
Yeah.
the physical strain on our bodies was one thing, but I think the emotional
Yeah.
strain was just as
Absolutely.
important. But to let your staff know that, they were isolated, but they weren't alone. They were in everybody's thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
And as you said, we're very fortunate here in Old Bridge
Yeah.
with the staff.
We're very grateful,
Very
for
grateful.
the support. And actually, I remember that day when they came and they supported everyone. So I made sure that every team member of mine went down and felt the applause as well.
Fantastic.
So as one group came up, all right, you guys are next. So at least we had nurses on the floor, so to continue watching the patients. But I made sure that every team member went down and felt appreciated.
And for the most part,
Yeah.
Dave, healthcare workers don't want the limelight. They
Yeah.
don't want
That's
to be in
right.
the spotlight.
That's right.
And you can see some of them were embarrassed,
Yeah.
but they did all have a smile on their face.
Yeah.
That's good. Make them
Even
blush
with
a
the
little
mask
bit,
on, we
right?
knew they were smiling.
Make them blush a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
they deserved a good
They did.
embarrassment.
They did.
That's good. Well, you had mentioned earlier that it's almost like a milestone. No active COVID patients at Raritan Bay
Yep.
as of the filming of today. So as we begin to look into the future, there's a lot of changes that are happening over at Raritan Bay. The emergency room, $40 million project
Yeah.
plus. I know you've been instrumental in making that happen. So what are you most excited for some of the new changes happening over at Raritan Bay?
Probably for the community to come in and to continue to support us. I mean, come and see our brand new ER for any little thing. Just come on in. It's great. It's brand new and it's
And
big.
It's almost
huge.
triple the size.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I walked down there and I was like, you get lost,
Yeah.
and you're surprised. I'm like, wow, we had all this space and it's
Yeah.
great.
And I believe there's a pharmacy that's right
Yeah,
there now.
we just opened up a brand new
cafe.
pharmacy, and we have a coffee shop. Well, with Starbucks, we're gonna plug Starbucks, but we Starbucks in there.
Don't forget
so
that.
Yeah.
and it's great. It's a good thing for team members to go down if they want a little break. If they don't want to go in the break room, I'm like, I'm going downstairs. Do you want anything? And everyone's like, yeah, get me this, get me this. So we're not actually calling any deliveries. So people are just going down there.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And the pharmacy's great new pharmacy as well.
It's beautiful. I got to
Yeah.
tour it before it was all filled out, but it's gorgeous. So
Yep.
with these big projects, they're on they're abstract. They're up in the air for years, and then it seems like all of a sudden they get rocking and rolling. So, has their project fulfilled the vision that you've had for the hospital and the town?
Along with many other people who had the vision. I can't help but mention Mr. Shanahan, who has passed away
Yes.
recently. He had the biggest vision. He was a big man, and he had
Yeah.
the biggest vision.
Yeah.
And many people at the Hackensack organization had the vision for Old Bridge Hospital to become what it is becoming now.
Yep.
And I can't thank them enough. And David, as a business, anytime a business invests where they're in their home base and they
Right.
expand, it's an investment in the community. And not only with the hospital, it's an investment in Old Bridge, it's an investment in our surrounding communities.
That's right.
They all benefit
Yep.
from Hackensack Meridian here. Many people, we don't build a wall around Old Bridge. Many
Yeah.
people using the facilities come from other communities.
Yeah.
And I know I appreciate that investment here in Old Bridge, and I know the community does also.
Yep.
It's really, and with the number of hospitals being reduced, it seems like almost on a monthly basis.
Right.
To have one in our town is really, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's a big boost to our local economy. It's a big, and safety more important, that our residents have almost instantaneous access to state-of-the-art healthcare
Right.
and imaging.
Yeah.
And as we all know, that takes time, it takes a lot of money, and it takes vision.
That's right. And in our show last month, we were talking about how there's 70 some odd hospitals in the state of New Jersey, and Old Bridge is blessed to have one of them. So
Yeah.
it's
Over
not like
500 towns. With
Right.
that, so.
Right. So you're in a minority, and obviously, as you said, we don't build walls here. We build bridges.
Yep.
Right. And it's for our community as well as surrounding communities to be there when the hospital is there to provide
And we're
those
not
services.
the typical setting in the state of New Jersey for a hospital. Most of our hospitals are inner cities.
Right.
If you took a bird's eye view from Old Bridge, you probably wouldn't even see the hospital. That's how dense we are as far as in
But we're in a great location. We're
It is.
right off one of the major highways.
crossroads,
Right.
Route
Yeah.
9 and Route 18, you're
yeah.
right there.
That's right.
Great location and no parking fees. So
That's it.
free parking.
No parking garage.
Yeah.
That's right. That's always a big help.
Yeah.
Always a big help.
Yep.
So any enhancements or changes in ICU then from a building perspective? Did they end up moving floors or changing your department around at all?
As of right now, no, except for, we're, like I talked before, negative pressure and everything. But as of now, there's like no need to, I guess, expand that I've heard of. But
Perfect.
it would be nice.
Yeah.
It would be nice.
We'll put that on the wish
Yeah.
list then for next time. So, talking about nursing and you're a manager in ICU, one part of the hospital, but what is the future of nursing after COVID?
Just moving forward with the times. Nurses are readily available to adapt, to change, and execute and care for the patients. It's always a change on the fly. If there's something that comes us that's new, we tackle it issue by issue, and
Right.
it's very adaptive. Nursing
Well,
is very
it's
adaptive right now.
interesting because when you say that, it's now there's a whole COVID protocol that's probably just as thick as something like cardiac or cancer, and you got to be really adaptive, and that's how the business world is, right? New issues come out every day. Sometimes
Absolutely,
it's,
yeah.
It's politics, it's consumer behaviors, but how is the climate for nurses? Are you guys looking for nurses? Is there a shortage? Is there an abundance?
Right now, with this past semester, we've had a good amount of students returning for their clinical settings, and their clinical groups were fairly large. When I was starting out almost 20 years ago, like our groups weren't that big, but you've had students in settings now, 10, 12 students in a clinical setting. I think that's a lot. I think there's more to come on that. I think nursing's an open field, a great field to dive into and learn more, because there's a lot with informatics, with education as well. That's a big thing. We need a lot of nurses in education. A lot of our professors and teachers, that's an open field right now,
Right.
is especially the education field in nursing.
Now,
everything.
what advice would you give to perhaps a nurse or maybe even a student that's considering ICU as a area of their practice?
Probably just get your foundation down first. Learning critical thinking skills is very important, but just being a brand new nurse and everything, I think you need the foundation on one of the med-surg floors or telemetry floors just to learn your organization skills, to learn to adapt and go from there.
And I know, Mayor, you'll welcome any nurses to Old Bridge, right?
We encourage it whenever I speak to young men and women, encourage them to get in such a field as nursing. It's a great profession, especially as you said, if it's the right person wanting to do the right thing
Right.
For the right reasons, to really help people. It gives them an opportunity to really help others, which is a calling that should be for a lot of people. And it's very tough. ICU nursing's got to be one of the toughest to get into. You see people in their worst state, but yet you have the opportunity to help them. And it's probably not a better feeling in the world to see somebody removed from ICU.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And move back into a regular room and then
Yeah.
out of the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, it's almost as bad as an emergency room. I'm sure
Right.
they send them up to ICU.
Yeah.
But it's great. I would encourage anyone if they consider getting in the healthcare field.
Yep.
Well, now they have Joe Banuan to reference, right?
Yes.
So we got a great guy
Absolutely.
right here in town, nurse
Thank you.
manager, ICU at Raritan Bay, Old Bridge. So, Joe, I want to thank you not only for being on our show today, for your work, for your sacrifice, and for the countless lives that I'm sure you've saved, and for the families that you've comforted over the last 15 months. On behalf
Thank
of
you.
Mayor and I, we just want to thank you and all of Old Bridge.
Oh, thank you. My team thanks
I echo
everyone.
David's comments.
Thank you so much. And on behalf of my team and my colleagues at Raritan Bay, thank you for having me on the show. And thank you for to the community for your continued support for us. And really just come to Old Bridge, come to Raritan Bay.
Amen to that. So, well, I want to thank you for watching our Bridge to Business, our episode here about the COVID pandemic, as well as the people and the lives that were touched by it. So join us next time. I'm David Hernandez. Thank you.